Chad, you're muted.
Let's try that. You good now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Justin.
Okay. So let's start off with the success factors brainstorming that Jesse's got. That way the chiefs can get out of here and go home.
Thank you, sir.
Well, always thinking of you guys in certain ways. I just want to be clear.
You said that.
Okay, so Jesse, you're going to talk us through this little paperwork.
Sure. I'm gonna if you haven't well, I'll share my screen anyways. Hold on.
Jesse, all the counselors each have one of the presentations on their desk as well.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna start on the second to last slide. Hold on, I just lost everything.
Project goals and success criteria.
There we go. So, so we're jumping around a bit, but basically the idea behind creating some, you can call it a bunch of different things. We can call it project goals, success criteria, or guiding principles. I'm using all of those terms interchangeably. They all mean the same thing. We can use whatever phrase works the best for you. It is irrelevant to me. But the idea is that as a council, you know, you're not really like hands-on, like in the design at this phase, that we're really kind of working with the building committee to do that and the community. And that council's involvement in this early phase is a little bit more like giving the team some guiding principles to use as part of our development. Just for an example, like a guiding principle would not be the building can't be larger than 10,000 square feet, but a guiding principle would be the building needs to meet both police and fire needs for 20 years of growth as efficiently as possible. That's a guiding principle that we can demonstrate how we accomplish that goal for you, but it's not as specific as limiting the building square footage. So what I propose to do is creating like a big brainstorm list. What are all of the things we could consider adding to some guiding principles? And then we'll kind of take a huge list and then have like each counselor basically pick your top 5 most important things. We'll do a little bit of voting and we'll start to talk about those, because the goal for the teams would be to distill a list down to maybe 3 to 5 guiding principles. This isn't a giant, huge list of information. And then I think another good idea is to maybe allow the community group to maybe add in 2 additional principles at the first meeting as well. So that is the task for today. Do you have kind of any questions on like the purpose of this or how it's going to be used before we get into it?
You're not expecting us to come up with these goals right now. We're just going over this little booklet, right?
No, this is what we're doing right now.
This is what we're doing right now. So we are going to be brainstorming right now.
Yep.
Yeah, some preparation would have been nice.
I think it might be easiest if we get started with the amount of time that the council has had the information. At least we can get started and talk about some of the possibilities, but I don't know that we're going to be able to finish this tonight, Jesse.
I would have needed a week.
You know, we've been talking about this station, police fire station now since 2006.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody on this council here should have some idea of what it is that they would like to have the fire station, police station be.
Right.
Okay, so is it some surprise to you that the committee, you know, Dan and I and these two over here are asking you guys to, what your opinions have been since 2006?
Well, I can tell you, I haven't been thinking about it since 2006, but I have been thinking about it for probably the last 10 years. Now, the idea of coming up and saying, this is what we're going to do right now is not something that I was prepared to do tonight. I thought we were going to go over this, give us an idea so we could come back and brainstorm and then cross off what we don't like. And then we meet again. Is that too hard for you to understand?
No, it's not too hard for me to understand. This is almost like what you did to Chad. Okay?
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
It is not.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
Well, you can point your finger and do
Jesse,
that.
Jesse, what is, I know that time is getting critical and time is starting to become money here as we get rolling with this. And we are getting ready to sit down and have our initial meetings with the design group, and they need this information. So the time is kind of the essence. Would you say that's correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we talked about in our last city council meeting, you told us that we were going to have this meeting where we establish the goals, the parameters. We can massage them a little bit as we go, but right now we need to, when we start having the meeting with the design committee, which is going to happen next week, we need to be able to give them some information to get them started. Otherwise, they're sitting around on their hands and it's costing us money. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, we have to get started. We need to schedule the first meeting
So
and get going.
Let's give it a try. If we need to move it to another meeting, I suggest that we go through, you've already come up with a list of suggestions, things that we can do. Once we start talking about it, maybe we'll get our brain juices going and people will come up with more ideas. And then at the end of this week, we could take a vote on that. And if we need to massage a little bit later, maybe we can, but we need to get started.
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. It would have been nice to know that this was going to be a hot ticket item for tonight's meeting, because I wanted to get through the tree ordinance and get that out of the way. That's been pushed off so many times. And I get it that you guys need some time and some direction.
So you just said tonight, at the beginning of the meeting, that this was going to be the first thing on the agenda.
That's
So these
okay.
two gentlemen here who've been here all day long, okay,
Right.
could get out of here.
That's
So this
right.
is the number one thing that we need to do right now. The tree ordinance can wait.
Thank you, Preston.
Thank you, Mayor.
So here's the thing, I would love to go through this list and give some thoughts to this. I'm not a fast thinker. I like to go home and mull things over. It's just the way I operate now. You guys have had the benefit of meeting with the Closs group for how many years now? 6 or 7? I don't even know. So you guys have been discussing this for quite a while now. We've not been privy to any of that discussion per se. I did watch one of the meetings and I read some of the minutes. So yeah, let's do what we can, but I can't make any promises about reaching conclusions.
Okay, so you have a list of what. And this would probably be the critical success factors.
So these are what I wrote down were just some ideas based upon what I've seen from other projects and what I know about this project, just to kind of get your brains flowing. So these could be like the basis for what a guiding principle could be. These are more, think of them as topics and kind of how it actually ends up in like a statement or a sentence later. Well, we can massage that later. So these are just topics. So some ideas for you is that we could establish a total not to exceed project budget, and it could be based upon your bonding capacity or maybe a property tax rate, that there's a maximum amount that's going to fly for this project. And so we could define that as a success criteria.
Okay, so does anyone have an idea of what our
Can I
bonding
finish going through
capacity
these?
is?
Can I finish going through the list, please?
You can, but I'm just curious right off the bat. Nobody has talked to this council about our bonding capacity. And
It's gonna take us some time to get there, but, you know, if there is some thoughts from the council, it would be good for the team to know as well. Regardless of what, you know, people are hearing around town, it's like, well, anywhere between $5 and $15 to $20 million is not to exceed. I think we're gonna get there more when we start getting some of our plans put together. But the concern, I think, the total project budget to be as efficient and, you know, to give the community what it needs without being extravagant would be a, you know, potential success factor.
I don't even know how I would make a decision like that. I'm just trying to think about how would I even know where to start as far as pricing goes? I mean, I know what the community, some of the people in the community are saying, but I have no idea what X amount of dollars buys us. How do I make an evaluation like that?
At this point, it's very difficult. You don't know what the geotech's gonna come back with. We don't know what kind of foundation that there is and that sort of thing. So that's maybe something that we can add some more data to as we get closer.
I mean, it's got to be a minimum of at least 10. It's definitely not going to be cheaper than that. 10 million.
Okay,
Okay, maybe we keep going through these items here.
sorry for interrupting, Jesse, go ahead.
Another idea is to say, you know, that you really want this on next year's ballot, so the schedule can't slip. This is a high priority for this project to be successful. Some building projects set a sustainability goal or a target. That doesn't mean you have to actually pursue a type of like green building certification like LEED, silver or gold levels. But you could say to, you know, we want you to meet a target of at least, you know, some sustainability practices.
Okay.
Number 4 is kind of how I started, which is, you know, that the building program really needs to efficiently meet fire and police needs for 10 years of growth, 20, 50, you know, how long do you want this facility to really support your community and your projected growth? Other ideas, you could talk about the architecture style, that maybe there's a certain buildings in Gearhart that make you think this is a Gearhart building and we want the style of this to kind of reflect these types of buildings. So that would give the team some direction there. We could define a goal that's around tsunami or other emergency preparedness levels and the functionality you want the building to be maybe after a major event. Number 7, I wrote like city departments have to remain functional during construction. That one's kind of a captain obvious to me. I don't think you actually need to set that as a guiding principle because that's just a necessity. So you probably don't need to worry about that one. I think a success criteria or guiding principle could be that, you know, that the community needs to have a really strong voice in the project and that they're really driving kind of the option that eventually gets selected. We could talk about just how we communicate with each other, that this whole process needs to be honest and transparent, and we need to be telling people the truth about the challenges of the project. So we could craft a statement like that. You know, maybe the building needs to be flexible and adaptable for emergency operations, but do you want to define that more strongly as part of the guiding principles? you could add in that sleeping quarters has to be provided to support volunteers, or maybe maybe the guiding principles more that the building design needs to support a volunteer department because we're not moving away from that or something like that. So those are just some ideas I generated. I was just curious if you have any other ideas that would kind of fit this genre or this task we're trying to do.
Okay.
All right, well, I really think one of the first ones should be strong community input. Because this is being driven and was started with the idea that the community would have a very big say in everything. So I don't know how you would word that in a guiding light kind of way for this project. But I do think that should be one of the first, if not the first, statement of our guiding principles.
I'm wondering if we can add to the brainstorm first and try to see if there's other important parts of this project that you think might be missing from this list.
Yeah, I like the idea of what you were talking about with the volunteers, but the thing is that none of us has a crystal ball. That I think it would be short-sighted, especially given the community conversations about districts and whatnot, for us to lock ourselves into building something that would only ever serve volunteers. I would say that one of my expectations would be an adaptability, future, flexibility for future growth or changes in the environment. But one of the things that I didn't see on here was safety. I want to ensure that it provides a safe operating environment for our employees and volunteers, and also protects the city against the risk that we would incur if we fail to meet that goal.
Okay. So adaptable to future growth, and maybe possible changing like staffing models.
Yeah, so before adaptable to future growth, I would say under, what is that, number 12? My eyes are so bad. I would say right-sized for current use, but adaptable
For future
for
use.
future growth,
Mhm.
yeah. I think right-sized is something that I'm hearing over and over and over. They're really worried that somebody is going to try and sneak by a building that is larger than what we need. So right-sized for our community, but adaptable for future growth.
All right, safe operating environment.
For employees and volunteers,
Yep.
to protect the city against risk.
Mm-hmm.
Exposure, I guess.
Any other brainstorm ideas for what you think this project needs to be?
Jesse, can you explain number 3 to me, the sustainability?
Yeah, so, for the, if you've heard of the LEAD program, it stands for, what does it stand for? Leadership and Excellence in Environmental Design, I think. It's basically, the term green buildings, sometimes solar is added, sometimes, you want like a really efficient mechanical and electrical system, so it uses less energy. It's really about using more environmentally friendly and sustainable building materials. It's using less energy in the building, and goals like that. And but sustainable things cost money, and they can add a premium to the building if it's kind of if it's over the top. So that's really what sustainability means in that context.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, I personally think for number 5, the architecture to reflect the style of other Gerhart buildings, I would think that I would want to make that as a goal, because I think that that's gonna be up to the public to determine what they think this should look like. I really don't care what it looks like as long as it's built.
And that will, honestly, Dana, I also think that that's one that doesn't really need to be in council's guiding principles, because the architect's definitely going to ask that of the community, so that they design a building that the community feels comfortable with and can support anyways. So frankly, I feel like that's already going to happen, no matter what. So I don't think you probably need to define that. But I wanted to leave it up there in case, you know, you guys felt it was like so important to you, you know, maybe it should be on this list if you think that could go astray, I suppose.
Can we talk a little bit about why the schedule's important, why number 2 is important?
Yeah. I jump around here. So I kind of planned a slightly different presentation for you, but I do want to talk a little bit about, well, you've seen all the slides. You ruined my big reveal here, but you know.
Sorry.
That's okay. Time is money. And you know, inflation and escalation, it's happening whether this project moves forward or not. And you've already seen it in previous building projects where the size of this facility is shrinking while the cost of it is increasing. That, you know, inflation is no joke. We've seen it at the grocery store the last couple of years, and it's very applicable in construction projects. And so right now, the whole project schedule is set up to be on the bond ballot or be on the ballot measure a year from now. And so I just wanted to kind of frame for you, like, let's pretend for a moment that this building ends up being about $15 million, which is probably reasonable. And if we kind of slow this whole process down and now the bond gets pushed out a full 6 months to May, I wanted you to understand the potential cost impact of that. And just assuming with really easy math of 5% annual escalation, even though we've been seeing higher than that, that's an extra $375,000 just for a 6 month time delay. You're not getting any more building for it. You're not getting anything else for it. It's simply just costing more. And so I wanted to put that in scale for you so that you can, you know, the decision making that goes into this, these conversations, anytime we talk about delaying stuff and moving stuff out, we're putting that bond measure in jeopardy and looking at possibly having much higher costs. That's a lot of extra money. So that's why schedule is very important. Any questions on that part? Does anybody not believe my math?
Oh,
Yeah, so this is Jesse, this is Peter Watts.
Yeah.
I mean, your math assumes that interest rates don't change.
Right.
And like interest rates are actually going down. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what interest rates will be in a year versus 18 months. But part of the reason that projects are coming in, bonded projects are coming in more expensive is absolutely workforce related. But part of it's because interest rates are right now higher than they have been for the last decade or so.
Yeah. And I feel like I've seen a lot of projects over the last 10 years kind of bank on hopes and dreams that, oh, this is going to fall in cost and this is going to drop. And it has happened exactly 0 times on any project I've been on. So, you know, I suppose it's always a dark horse candidate that you could get lucky and somehow the economy changes in your favor. But a 6 month delay, I think almost always like 99.9% of the time is going to result in more cost to you. Anyways, that was just a little context around schedule. And then, so that was for number 2, right? That keeping this thing on track to help control the budget, to help maintain the momentum of this project, you know, could be one of your guiding principles, because that's important to you.
Okay.
I think another way to maybe look at number 6, because the 3 that I just picked out to be very important are the community input, guidance, and support. The schedule is very important. We're trying to meet a timeline that we need to head towards. So schedule and budget are kind of hand in hand. And then disaster resilience, maybe, you know, looking at number 6, tsunami preparedness level, change that more to disaster resilience, ensuring the building is designed to withstand a range of natural and man-made disasters, including earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, high winds, to support the continued operations and rapid response in emergencies. Those 3 seem to be really key, and if we can add a couple of more that would assist the community in helping us make some decisions and understanding the importance of such a facility. Because you kind of want to keep this between 3 and 5 of these, you know, guiding principles, right? To be able to write a good statement.
Yeah, you want it to be kind of, I mean, this is meant to be short and sweet. They're guiding principles. It's not a manifesto, for example. And so one of the ways we've used this before, something like this, is when we start the community engagement meetings, we'll put the guiding principles up on the very first slide. Like, as a reminder, this is why we're here. These are the charges that Gerhardt City Council has given to the design team, and this is what they've given to the community. These are the important kind of guardrails to stay on for this project. And the guardrails want to be a little broad. We're trying not to be very, very specific and narrow down our window of how this building takes shape. So that's kind of how we use the guiding principles, and that gives us an ability to come back to you then a couple of months from now and say, you asked us to meet these 5 guiding principles, and here's how we did it. And here's the things we evaluated within those. And so it gives you an ability to kind of hold us accountable to making sure these goals are met as well.
I think that there's a possibility here. I mean, if we start kind of getting this into the realm of maybe a couple of more issues that we think that the community, what is it that the community is saying right now that, you know, what they want from the fire station or what they want from this location? What have they been talking to us about when we're out there talking to the community? We've got schedule, we've got community input, we've got resiliency. What other kind of things is it that's very important in regards to this fire station?
Location and cost.
Location, right? Like that it needs to be central.
And cost. Those are 2 big things.
Location and costs. So come up with a statement that would speak to that, about what our concerns were, what our concerns are, and maybe prompts us on how to get through that conversation.
So Jesse, I think what we're saying, what I'm hearing is that number 1 is very important, but tonight we're not going to come up with a number. But and I think that that's fair. Without getting more information, I mean, that's why we're hiring these experts to give us that type of information. How much is this going to cost? Even you can only give us a ballpark figure. I mean, if we were to build a pole barn, we're going to have a lot, you know, less cost than if we build an actual, you know, a different structure. So it's too soon for us to determine how much it's going to cost. But yes, once we establish the price that the community is willing to pay, and we're going to need some public input on that, then we need to make sure, then yes, I would say that would be our number 1 goal, is that we're going to stick to that budget. And we're not going to add in things that we don't need, like very expensive MRSA resistant paint or, you know, unneeded things that people are worried that we're going to add in.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
sorry. So you have a set of criteria that's dictated by the federal government, is that correct? By the state? Where do we start from? There's givens in a situation like this that the public probably needs to be apprised of, right?
Yeah, that'll be, I mean, certainly part of the community engagement is about education. And there's a lot of code factors, that's mostly by the state, some of it's local, but, and then we've got national building codes as well. So building code does dictate a lot of the minimum requirements that go into this. And so that's part that will be explained as part of the community engagement. Like I mentioned, the foundation design and the town hall. I expect that to be pretty pricey, to be honest. But we're going to provide the data and the information about why it is expensive and why it's designed that way. And it's because code requires us to. And the other thing we've been talking about is a lot of community members are sending stuff in. Hey, this fire station was built for 8 million in Yakima or whatever, and kind of pulling in these other buildings. And so part of the education piece will be explaining why it's not apples to apples, and that people really need to understand that conditions at the coast are unique. The labor workforce is much more difficult to get here. It's much more expensive to get here. There's a lot of travel time and per diem costs. As a public works building, we have to pay prevailing wages. That's expensive. And then between designing a building in the highest earthquake zone in the country, and soils that are not great in earthquakes, and working around tsunami, like those really increase building costs to the point where you simply cannot compare it to an easy peasy fire station in another location. It just doesn't work.
Okay, because I've gotten some input from citizens about, well, look at this place and look what it was built for. So there are people who are talking about that exact scenario. So I think that that's important to explain to the public.
Yep, that'll be, I mean, it has to be part of it, because these are common things that we hear in this industry, and people don't understand how much stuff costs. And I'll be honest with you, as much inflation that has occurred over the last couple of years, sometimes I don't even believe costs anymore, because it's changed so rapidly in such a short period of time. It takes like my barometer for what's normal and has messed up my gauge for those things. And so that's part of some of the things we'll have to explain, certainly.
That might be in the location and compliance and resiliency in regards to this building. Like a new public safety building will be located to maximize safety, accessibility for efficient emergency response, respecting community needs, adhere to all governmental code and OSHA requirements, long-term value by focusing on durability, low maintenance materials, energy efficiency. Can kind of all been wrapped up into one. And maybe be part of that 3. I can copy and paste that and put that into the possibilities or a draft that, once we're thinking about that and we see a draft of 3 to 5 of these, begin putting this together, I think, fairly easily.
I have an issue with number 9 on there. Team communication with council and community will be honest and transparent. Just that statement would make it appear that we are not usually honest and transparent. It's not a good look for the city. So I just think we should just not even consider that ever.
That's a good point.
I mean, when
We could say continue our honest and transparent
Yeah.
communications.
but I don't think it should be, I mean, you just expect your government to be honest. Well, actually, no, never mind.
Okay.
But our goal here, getting back to our goal is to establish the 5 things, the 5 sort of overriding, guiding desires of the council going forward, so we kind of have a direction moving forward. When we're going forward, we want to think about budget, for example, we want to think about the schedule, we want to think about safety, we want to think about location, and we want to think about
Needs.
whatever. So if we don't agree with one of these, we don't include it. We don't have to include, not all of these are going to appear on our guiding principles.
No, you should, it'll be a fraction of this list, in the
You're
end.
looking for
This is a
five,
brainstorm, so.
you're looking for us to narrow this down to what are our 5 to 8 most important.
3 to 5,
3 to 5. 3 to 5 most important goals to have.
yes. So how I had envisioned doing that was to kind of start with a brainstorm. And then everybody take a couple minutes with the list and pick your personal, maybe top 5 that you think are the most important. And then we can kind of maybe collect some votes. And I think that's going to tell us right away where you guys are leaning. We're going to see like ones that have multiple votes. That's starting to tell us, hey, this is really important. This is going to make the list. Ones that get no votes probably are maybe second tier, and we can hold off on talking about them for now. And then that's going to help us kind of create a short list of our most important goals. Is that a task you can handle right now?
Yeah, can we let that marinate? I would suggest that we let it marinate for a little bit. You go through your slide and let us kind of process what's going on and understand some of the other things on your slideshow, and then come back to this because I see it's your last slide anyway.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, either way, I can go back to the beginning.
While we're sitting here listening, things might come up.
Yeah.
I'm
going to share my screen larger again for a second. This is a graphic I got off the internet, so don't think too much into it. The reason I want to show it to you is I want to explain a little bit about the design process of a building like this, because if you haven't been through it before, I think it feels very mysterious, and it feels like the train's leaving the station before you ever had a voice in what's happening. And so the reason I liked this one is usually when I see, timelines, it just looks very linear, and there's like these milestone dates that get met. But what that doesn't tell me is like, how is that process really going to work? And so what I like about this one is I feel like these circles start to demonstrate the iterative nature of design. So we're going to start, so this phase that we're doing, the whole next year is only conceptual design. We're coming up with basically a building program, which is really working very closely with Josh and Josh primarily to really understand what all of their needs are, and then how we can meet those needs in an efficient manner, make spaces multi-purpose or multi-use or flexible, and so that we have a way to really defend. We call it the building program. This means that we're providing all of the spaces they need to operate with ways to justify it. And so, but it's iterative, like the architect's gonna work with staff for a while and get some information. They're gonna do a little bit of design work. They're gonna show it to the building committee. The building committee is gonna show them, give them a little bit of feedback. Then we're gonna take it to the community, and council will have a chance to hear. And then we're gonna hear feedback from those guys. And then the design concepts that are in progress are gonna change again. And it's gonna go in these kind of circles of that loop. And so the whole first year, we're only working in that first purple section, conceptual design. And then once you have funding, then the full design of the building takes off. And we repeat that process with different levels of detail at each phase. So this conceptual design phase is really about, where does the building go? How is it sited? What does it kind of generally look like-ish? And what is a floor plan that basically works? That's all this phase is. Then after that, it really starts to become refined. In schematic design, again, we start doing this iteration because it's a year from now. We start where we meet with fire and police again, make sure, have any of your needs changed? Do we need to rethink this? And we start to add more definition as we keep going through the whole process with lots of check-ins with people and it gets more detailed as we go along. So that's my bubble diagram of how a project works. Is that explanation kind of helpful to you to kind of understand what will be coming up in the future so that I want you to feel like you've got lots of opportunities to have a voice in this over time, and you will. Because I think there's some people who have felt like you haven't had a chance to be involved yet.
I think it's great that you explained this, because when I read it, I thought, how do you guys already have a design company? You know, and I'm going, this can't be right. 3D model of the interior and exterior, I mean.
Yeah, no, that's all stuff. This is a very good visual of, you know, people have been saying decisions are being made without us and everything else, and this is just establishing that no decisions have been made. We are just now beginning to crawl, but when we're crawling, we're gonna have to learn how to walk really fast. This is the point where things start snowballing, and we need to start making decisions, and sometimes we're not gonna have a lot of time to make those decisions. But if I'm reading this correctly, we're essentially in the city council's portion of the client questionnaire. Would that sound accurate to you? We are saying as a council somewhat tonight, this is what we think our goals are gonna be. And then it's also gonna go to the public at some point during our town halls, and we're gonna get feedback from them as far as what they're expecting this building to be. Is that sound correct?
Yes.
Or no?
Yes.
Okay. So, and there's no right or wrong answers, it's just what feedback can we give you that we believe, what do we believe the folks that we represent, what do they want? And then we're gonna give that information to them to let them get started, but then we're also gonna verify that information and measure the, you know, our success at coming to that determination or at that conclusion.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, has anyone made any choices as to what their bullet points are that they're interested in?
I have.
You have? You have?
Should we write it up on, let's write it up on the piece of paper. We have a pen that we can write with.
We will see.
On your scribe, I can't, because you'll be able to read my handwriting, oh, here we go.
Right.
Was that?
Trying to write.
I would love for you to write.
Or if you
That's one of my favorite foods.
Oh, what? Do it again. Great. So glad.
We might need to do multiple pieces of paper too, so it's some tape.
Okay.
I appreciate you doing that.
So we also, you know, as we talked about it, we've added a few extra numbers. So we changed we've changed number 12 to be right sized for current use and adaptable to future growth. We added 13, 14, and 15. So 13 was about being a safe operating environment for everybody. 14 is about the location, right? This is something, you know, central to downtown Gerhart. And then I added a number 15, which could be about accessibility. Again, there's codes about making sure your building is accessible. So you probably don't need that one, but I wanted to write it down anyways. So they're all up for voting. Okay. What I would recommend that we do is we just quickly go through this number up here and we just do a show of hands. Who would put well, how do you want to do this? Jess, do you want to? What I would say is like, Dana, tell me your top 5 and the numbers, and we'll put like a little
okay.
next to it.
We can do that.
We'll go around the room that way.
Okay. So I have for my top 5, I have budget, whatever it is, and that again is going to be, that's going to be public driven. Whatever they're going to pay is what our budget is, but whatever it is, sticking to it is going to be important. And I would say, to my mind, the schedule becomes a subheading of that. So for me, you can put budget. Okay. As my 1, put schedule in smaller letters underneath it. And then I would say. Community input, guidance. Support. Um. And then number 12 and 13, right-sized and safe operating environment are. I don't know that I necessarily think those in this right order, because those are really, really important, because. That impacts our budget also, because I would rather pay for this than pay for sanctions. Or have anybody face criminal charges because we failed to provide a safe environment. So I'll leave it at that.
At that. Okay,
Who's next? Preston?
yeah,
Okay, my number one would be, that the program efficiently meets the fire and police needs.
Yeah.
These are the guys that, okay. Number two is location. The location is going to determine what the size of the facility is going to be. And then that goes into the budget.
So should I put budget next, Preston?
That's it. We got location?
Yep.
Yeah, that's gonna reflect what the budget's gonna be.
Okay.
And then there's number 8, community input, guidance, and support design solutions, very important.
Great. Okay. I can't tell who's next. I can't see that far away.
Sure.
Sharon, thank you.
Hang on, he's writing.
Van is still working. Short. This is where we need to take.
Yeah, it's the outline, good thought.
Very.
I'm ready. Thank you.
I'm wondering if we can combine 8 and 9 somehow. Communication, transparent communication between the team, the council, and the community with the goal of community understanding and input. I'd like to combine those two. Is that
Mhm.
cheating? Is that cheating?
No, I think these can end up as complex sentences. Just don't lawyer them to death and make it so nobody can understand it. No offense.
That seems understandable.
What was your
to me.
second part of the combination style?
Okay, so.
We got communication, transparency. And
Russell?
No, I didn't. Just building. Communication between the team, the council, and the community with the end result of community in understanding and input.
And while we're working, we've got a little bit of time with this. Garrett knew about tonight's meeting. He was prepared for tonight's meeting, but he is incommunicado at the moment. So haven't been able to get a hold of him via text, or I just went out to take a phone call. So we've got a little time to work on this till I can hear from him.
He was like, he doesn't have his plate isn't full, being back in the Hurricane Alley.
Okay, second one, budget. Third one, meeting fire and police needs. Can we not put safety also as part of that category? For a safe environment, operating environment?
I think so.
Might won't have to be separate. Location?
Anything else? I think that rounds out your top.
1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 up there.
Do you want more?
Yeah. I got one more, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Let's see.
Oh,
I'm gonna put sustainability.
All right, good night, Mayor.
With that over, just get that. That way I'll sit down and take a look at this and see how it goes.
You wanna go next, Rita?
We can.
Good enough.
We can get an idea.
you ready? Okay, I kind of circled them. I like the project budget, blah, blah, blah. And I like number 4, meet fire police needs for how many years of growth. I also like Chad's revised number 6, instead of tsunami preparedness level, but preparedness for all these other things, windstorms, fire, rain,
Disaster.
yes.
Resilient.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. It encompassed a lot of different ideas. Then I liked the community input one. And for my last one, I liked location.
She was quick.
She got it. It's pretty good.
Okay, I've got community input as my number 1. Number 4, I figured I'd make 4 and 12 together. That's the program must efficiently meet fire and police needs. And my third one was number 2, the schedule is all important as far as making.
Can't write that fast.
I'm on it. I'm on it.
Oh, he's there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't have to look, I can tell by the.
I take notes for a living, you
Yeah,
gotta.
it takes the course in the field, depends what
He's
you
used to writing tickets.
And my 4th one is the budget.
Okay.
We have 5 if you want.
No,
Go crazy.
no, I am.
Well, we're almost done. Now we need to click this up here.
So you guys, I think what I'm seeing here, just kind of looking at where I put these red X's, which is really how you voted, I think budget and schedule, like Dana, you've mentioned a bunch of times, they're basically related. That is one guiding principle, because once that schedule, breaks away from us, that is going to affect the budget. So I think one guiding principle is probably related to budget and schedule tied together. Then the community and communication pieces, multiple people said that those could be combined, and I agree with you. And then I think you can have basically a third guiding principle
What was
about,
that second one more time?
Yeah, back up.
oh, sorry. The second one is really kind of combining 8 and 9 about the community input and how we communicate with each other, right?
Yeah, I think everybody had that as on their list.
Yeah, exactly. So I think those two kind of combined into one statement is a guiding principle. And then I think the third guiding principle is really revolving around that the building program to efficiently meet the needs in a safe environment that's adaptable to future growth. Like you can almost combine 4, 12, and 13 into one guiding principle. And then there could be a fourth one, which is really just about location, which is that it needs to be central to Gerhard.
Okay, yeah, location was on 3 of the
Yeah,
list, but I'm sorry, I missed what were we gonna do before location?
the kind of combining the building program about efficiently meeting fire and police needs. with 12 and 13, which is kind of right sizing it for current needs and future growth. And then making that
Well,
building.
that kind of preparedness and resiliency is kind of. I mean, that goes hand in hand with that also, anybody who said that. So we said. Education sustainability.
Can't you just say in a resilient building?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Is that okay?
okay, so read what you have back to us again, just all in a row again.
So number one, budget and schedule, they're tied together. And you can make that into one guiding principle.
Okay,
Okay. Number two is about the combining kind of number 8 and 9, which is the community input. And being honest, you know, getting their input and communicating with them transparently.
Sorry.
Okay. And then I think the third one was really about the building program. This is where we could get a little so we're designing a resilient a resilient facility meets fire police needs. You know, currently and for future and adaptable for future growth. And adaptable for future growth, whatever, like in a safe and, you know, that in a building that's safe for staff or something like that.
okay,
And then maybe location, it needs to be central to Gerhart, central to downtown, or whatever phrase you want to work.
it's gotta be acceptable to the greatest group of, the largest group of individuals, we're never gonna get complete agreement, but we've gotta get consensus.
Yeah. So I think, so what I think this exercise has told us is that we've got kind of 4 overarching guiding principles that if you guys can kind of start to think about how you'd like to phrase these, like the idea is maybe one, you know, they shouldn't be paragraphs each, try and make it just one complex sentence that gets your point across. And then these are some big goals that you're basically telling the whole team, the committee, and the community that this is what this building is about and this is what it needs to be.
He's been big enough to hold the fireman's wall.
Forever.
Spelled police wrong. Boom.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Make the courtesy.
Okay, Jesse, do you expect us to come up with these one sentence to cover this right now?
No, you don't have to do that right now. That could be homework. Maybe, maybe somebody would volunteer to write one up, or people could volunteer to write one up, and then you could start to email it around or something. I don't know how you want to write it. I wanted to help focus your thoughts on it, which I think you've done. I think you guys have all gotten here. Is that you're not unanimous, but I feel like you could kind of take these, expand on them, and then maybe, or create maybe a couple versions of them and then start to wordsmith it. But yeah, I'd say if you could get something together within a week or two.
Well, in 2 weeks,
So
we'll
we
have a
can't,
city council
we can't
meeting.
email these, we can't email these around.
Yeah, we can't make a decision that way.
That's a serial meeting issue.
Okay,
Right.
well, however you guys need to do things, I can't, you know, that's the process part I don't know about, but, I mean, if you need to discuss it in a meeting like this to solve it, then yeah, we could do this right now.
Well, we can't make a decision tonight either.
if we get an email where I can have these items on here, basically written out as we've been speaking. We can get that out to you right away so that you have those to start thinking about it. And then we can bring the statement, however it is that we want to put this statement together, whether it be a list of things or a narrative, to the next city council meeting in a couple of weeks. And then finalize it. But I think what we're doing is we're getting a pretty good idea for what the architects, so that they can begin hearing what we want to be working on. At least so that they understand a little bit more about the situation.
Well, we have our next work session on the 30th.
If this was kind of taking the place of that, but we have
Oh, it
that,
was,
we
okay.
have that date available, and we may need it again depending on Garrett. So we may have to do, that work session at the end of the month. Again, Garrett's in a situation that's very difficult. I don't know what happened with his communication. He was ready to go for tonight's meeting and he's not yet here.
Who you texted him?
I texted him, I tried to call him.
Able to maybe have two people, work on writing these up and work together to come
I'm
up.
happy to work on the writing.
Okay. So maybe that's a way to do it, is two people could kind of work on it together, come up with some, sentences you like. And then bring that up in the next meeting. And then you would just have like maybe a little bit of wordsmithing at that point, but your general principles would be kind of crafted at that point.
Is this, the 6th is the next official meeting that we have where we would normally make decisions? Is that too far out for you, Jesse, for us to make a decision?
I don't think so, because, so definitely, but when we have the first community meeting, they're gonna want to be up on a slide. Between now and then, I don't think it's hard to tell the architects where we're heading with this. I mean, they already know that these are the goals anyways. They were already in the RFP. We've already discussed it. And so I don't think you're gonna be coming in with anything radically different that's gonna change how they need to start thinking about it. So I think the 6th is fine.
Well, I'm comfortable with allowing Sharon to craft something. I'm sure whatever she comes up with will be more likely be something that I can agree with, and then we make a decision, final decision, or massage it a little bit on the 6th, if that works. Do you think?
I think that's a great idea. Who are you gonna work with, Sharon?
I can assist Sharon with that as well, and maybe Rita, do you want to help with that wordsmithing a little bit?
Yes, of course.
You know a lot about words.
Well, Chad, I think you're very good at how you put things, so.
Yeah, between us and then we can work with staff a little bit and then get something that I think that would be pretty good. You guys got a lot farther than I thought beginning of the meeting, so things will be a little bit better.
Peter, does that sound okay? Are we stepping out of line? We doing anything we shouldn't?
I mean, what would make me uncomfortable is if a third person somehow became involved.
Yeah, so the rest of us stay out of it. Let's
Yeah.
wait for the meeting and then discuss the product.
Exactly.
Okay, I think that's a good plan and because the League of Oregon Cities conference probably early next week. If that's possible, just kind of work on it.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Yes, I'll have it by Monday.
Okay.
I can commit to that.
Then we can talk from there. It's okay. All right.
Is that? So we're good on this point? Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I think that's good. The other thing that will be, so I'm gonna meet with the architects tomorrow and we're gonna just we're really strategizing for a kickoff meeting with our building committee group on Monday. And one of the things that we're gonna have to pick is the first date for the community engagement session. So that, I imagine most of you would like to be present for that. I'm certain we don't want it to conflict with another council meeting. But are you able to give me some feedback on some dates we can start looking at? I think at this point, we could try before Thanksgiving, but that makes me a little, that might be a little tight. I would pick maybe one date before Thanksgiving, not Thanksgiving week, that Monday through Wednesday, but the week before. And then I'd say, let's also look at the week after Thanksgiving.
So that'll be the 18th through the 22nd as a possibility. And then,
Of November.
yeah,
18th through the 22nd or December 2nd through 6th.
I'm available the whole week, 18 through 22.
I believe I'm available that week also. The what?
Not be part of city council.
That's with me. There might be a change in the wind.
I think maybe Chad, you could maybe work with everybody to look at those 2 weeks and just see. You know, obviously, we're not gonna have a community meeting on like a Friday night, but you know, like what days of the week work best and stuff like that. And so that maybe for Monday with the architects, if you had a couple of dates that could work, we could get that scheduled because we need to start advertising that and getting the word out.
I think there's some plans for the week, I'm sorry, the 18th through the 22nd. I think that we should look more seriously at, if we can, the 2nd through the 6th.
When is the council meeting?
The
4th.
6th, November 6th.
December.
December.
Oh, December, are we into December? Okay. Yeah, it's on the 4th. The 2nd does not, would not work for me except for in the evening.
I cannot commit to any time today on that. I
Okay,
gotta go look at.
I'll work with Kristen, we'll put together some dates and get some options and then find out from you folks. And
Okay.
how the schedule's gonna work, because I just was really deep with you. Looking at all the schedules, and it's gonna be tough that 3rd week of November.
Well, moving it out to December also gives, if we do have new council members, it gives them time to get up to speed.
Yeah,
I had a couple other pieces of information prepared. Let me just go over these real quick. So let me make this big again. Just want to go back to kind of the building committee versus city council, and kind of who's doing what and how it's going to work. So, you know, the building committee that has been meeting has been Chad, Josh and Josh, Dana and Preston, Christy. Mark McFadden joined today, so we have Public Works represented, myself, and then FFA Architecture will start to join us. And so the building committee is really going to be doing, you know, that first graph I showed you, those little iterative circular bubbles. They're really going to be a strong feedback group for that, for those types of questions from the architects. So they're going to be really, this building committee, specifically, it's going to be mostly Josh and Josh, to be honest, but that working through that building program and the building needs is going to be very important. That's going to be done at the committee level. We're going to be generating the agendas for the community meetings, the agendas and the formats, and talking it through with the building committee meetings so that they have a say in how that's going to take shape. The committee is going to be able to provide to see some of the options before the community so that we can maybe stop in its place some possible bad ideas or things that we know is going to run people the wrong way. And we'll provide some feedback. You know, maybe the architecture team generates 4 options to start for discussion points, and the building committee is able to kind of narrow it down to 2 that goes to the community group. So we're going to be relying on that group for that type of feedback. And so generally, and then just going to be providing guidance on how to refine the design, how to make it better, how to maybe address some other concerns. It's not really big decisions, but it is providing a lot of feedback and guidance. And we're meeting every other week. And then for city council, really the goals are that you guys are really setting those guiding principles that we just talked about, attending all the community meetings. So you're listening and really hearing the entire process. You'll be getting periodic updates from either the committee or myself or the architects at either work sessions and council meetings. And then really though, city council is, you're gonna be really receiving the recommendation from the community group. And then you're gonna be voting, does this meet the city's needs? And are we gonna put this on the ballot? Do we feel, is this project in the right place or not? So that's really kind of the vision for how we manage this process in a public works environment so that we can stay on schedule and get this done and do it at a pretty reasonable cost. Any questions on that? Okay.
I just like to clarify, because we do have some time, I'd like to clarify some stuff that's been said in the past, and some people are wondering about it also in the public. I think we should clarify that the mayor, under the city charter, he gets to determine committees, he appoints committees and committee members. So that's why we are doing this on a committee, but another reason why we are doing this committee is because, as you said, we're meeting every week and a half to 2 weeks. And if we were to do this, somebody asked in the past why we're not doing it as a city council thing. In order for us to do that, we would have quorum issues. We just right now had a hard time finding a date that we can all work together. If we had to do that with every single meeting, getting back to the schedule thing and how much it would cost us, how many meetings we would have to put off until the future. That's the reason why a lot of this is being done committee, but the big decisions are not going to be made by the committee. And I want to make it clear that if the committee is ever not really sure how everybody's going to feel about it, we're like, okay, that's something that we'll have to get back to you on. Nobody's making any decisions as far as that goes. That we feel that we don't, that would be overstepping that. Somebody said that we have more opportunity at this. We mentioned in the last city council meeting that we were going to need to do this tonight during a work session. And then today, Preston and I sat down with you, and that's the first time we saw that list, and we haven't had any prior opportunity. And we have been very careful to make sure that whether you've watched the videos or not, the videos have been available all along for you to watch. And we're doing our best to get the notes to you so that you can be aware. So, I mean, we're doing what we can.
Got it. Thank you, Dana. Okay, Jesse, is there anything else on your end?
Yes, I do want to talk about the geotechnical work. That is a contract you approved at the last council meeting. We absolutely need soil information to develop some of the preliminary engineering so that we understand the costs. It's going to be a big cost driver, and it's information that has to be known. So we're definitely doing one at the current site. That's obvious. We're definitely doing that. However, the school site has gone kind of back and forth on whether it's really going to be available for this whole project or not.
Well, Jesse, I've got an update for that when you're ready.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So today I had a meeting with Mr. Bob Maury, and him and I went down to the school site to take a look at the area that he was considering. And he still is very much interested in working with the city and providing this site as an opportunity for the fire station. This again is the site that's in front of the school, between the school and Pacific Way. And although we don't know what the design is going to look like because we're not there yet, we don't know how the layout would work. He is still interested in keeping that as a possibility for the community to consider. So that said, if, you know, depending on what the council thinks and, you know, our budget, as we've already established, city staff would just need some direction on how the council would like to move forward. Now, Jesse, that's just an update for, you know, what I've learned here recently. Is there anything more that you wanted to talk about in regards to the geotechnical work?
Well, it was just that if the school was, because what we talked about this morning is that it was gonna be, it sounded like it was gonna be off the table until April, until we looked at zoning, and if that's the case, then we can't really consider that property for this project, because it doesn't work into the timeline. And so what we discussed this morning is, well, do we save a little bit of money? And I'm guessing it's about $10,000 to not do any soil borings at a second site. But I think if it's still on the table and we're still hoping that it works out, I think the contract is already approved and it sounds like you should probably just get the soil information at both the school site and the existing site so that we have it. Because remobilizing for those guys is very expensive. It's at least like you lose immediately a couple grand just for the drill rig coming out here. So they're gonna do the borings, both of them. They want to come out in one trip to be the most cost effective for you.
Okay, Peter,
Yes.
Peter, have you had any contact with Bob's lawyer? Have you worked out anything? Is there any kind of deal in the making?
Yeah, so I have talked to Carrie Richter, who's his attorney, and she said that they would she has indicated that they'd cooperate. They understand that we would need to do due diligence on this site, and you know, doing the geotech on it, we would then know whether it could work or not, which I think that could be information, you know, for the community as we discuss what's viable and what's not. So I think that they'll cooperate in giving us access easement if we decide to move forward with that.
Okay.
So does the council have any questions that Jesse and I can answer about that process?
I don't have any questions. I would, if Peter feels that this is a valid offer.
I mean, the school's current zoning is the public zoning. So as it's zoned currently, it could have a public safety building on it. I think that the question, given the proximity to the creek and some of the septic issues in the past, you know, I don't know. It seems like there might be a lot of fill on that site. So you know, I think the geotech would answer some of that so that we would know, is this, you know, we don't know as we sit here today. There do seem to be members of the community that have touted that site as a site for our fire station. So if we did get the geotech, then we would know one way or the other whether it would be, and then we could have that community conversation. And, you know, Councilor Gould really kind of asked a lot of questions about the donation, and I think that we all heard what was said, but no, we do not have a binding written commitment for a donation at this time.
So Peter, so we are taking the risk of spending approximately $10,000 to have that site board without knowing that we have a firm commitment, correct?
Well, we have a verbal representation, but yeah, we don't have a written commitment.
Well,
I mean, there hasn't been a donation. Let me put it that way.
And we still cannot make a decision tonight, but we're just kind of, we're talking this through tonight, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way that we had worded the way we had worded that agenda item at the last meeting gave us the flexibility for potentially a second site. We have the most obvious potential second site that we were looking at the time, that our timeline is not going to work with that family's timeline. So we have the flexibility in order to do something. If there's kind of interest in it.
Okay.
When are the geotech people supposed to show up? Do you know?
The question was, when is the geotech people supposed to show up? They're ready to go and they can immobilize fairly quickly. I don't know exactly, but they are waiting for us to make a decision. To either go with one side or two.
All right.
Well, I'm hearing from the community, from a lot of people that are concerned about the ethics of this proposal. And enough, the information that they're giving me, a lot of folks have called the state, and the information that they gave me prompted me to also call the state and call CIS. I don't feel comfortable if this is a very nice offer, and if it had come in August, I'd be delighted to say, yeah, let's use it as a second, but as it stands, I do not feel comfortable because I think that there could be problems with both campaign finance issues, and also if Bob is elected as mayor, undue influence to affect, or I'm sorry, prohibited use of official position, whether those eventually turn out to be right or wrong. We could spend a lot of time litigating that, and all of us could be, or I could be embroiled in that, and CIS wouldn't give me advice, but they did want to tell me several times that I would be limited to only $7,500 worth of coverage if somebody were to file an ethics complaint, because I voted for this, and they said that enough times that I think I got the message that they were trying to tell me. So I would say I would love to revisit this in November, but right now I can only, my vote is only going to be for boring one site. In November, maybe that'll change, and I know that'll cost more money, and that's unfortunate. I didn't create the timing on this, so it is what it is.
Well, it'll be the day after the election, so we should have an idea of what's gonna happen. But as of right now, it's without some kind of formal agreement, I couldn't, if I was voting, which I'm not, and I'm not trying to decide right now, but I would not vote for this until I had a clear pathway forward. And that's with a written agreement. I have, you say once bitten, twice shy, or something like that. So, good. We can't do anything anyway. No decisions are made in the work session, so we've got this out in the open. We're gonna have to wait until November, is it 6th? The council meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's-
I'm not sure, this contract is already approved to do borings at 2 sites. Where I think, like Chad, I think has the authority to tell us, just kidding, only do 1, you reduce the scope. I don't know that it's really a council decision about the geotechnical work. Like, I don't know that you need to wait to a council meeting. I'm not an expert at that, but it is already, all the scope is approved. So just telling them to do less isn't really a council level decision.
I would like to at least get on the schedule of the current site
Okay.
in order to meet.
But that means down the road, we may have to remobilize them and bring them in.
He says it's
Just-
about an extra $3,000. So an extra mobilization will be 3,000.
Okay,
So that's not that bad. I mean, it's better than risking $10,000 on on something you may not need. And I increased this, I ballparked it because they have to do the drilling, they have to restore this, the soil, and then they have to analyze the results. And so I think it's a lot more than just a remobilization charge.
Sure,
So
okay,
I think what I'm hearing is that we should let's just hold off on the soil for the school site. And if we get traction in that, and it starts to feel more solid in a month or so, that paying a little bit more to remobilize for that is probably the smart way to go, for this project.
I agree.
I do too.
I agree.
Does anybody disagree?
It doesn't appear that anyone disagrees with that statement.
Okay, how about this? I will give you guys a couple days to think about it, but other than that, let's say early next week, we'll tell the geotechnical engineer to get the boring done on the current property. And that will be the scope for now, and we may have to add more later.
Okay.
All right.
We did not make a decision, we're just agreeing with it.
Correct. Okay, that is all I had prepared for you tonight. So I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have them.
I don't have any questions. Anyone have a question for Jesse?
No, thank you,
No.
Jesse.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming out. Your input was really helpful.
Thank you.
No, thank you. All right,
Nice.
Garrett is not here.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
And I'm sorry, but I guess there's one thing that we can talk about in regards to trees when you're ready. Garrett put together the small staff report that you have on your desk of things that we were to kind of talk about. Miss Justine was in the record earlier and wanted to make sure that we're also considering the tree restrictions on who can plant what type of trees near a septic system. And I think that's something that we needed to accomplish that didn't make it onto the sheet. Is there any other questions that we have?
Do people not know that you're not supposed to plant near septic?
Yes, they do not know.
They do not know.
Some people don't. I mean, there's a large, it's a pretty big, because we've lived around here and we're used to septic systems. For us, it's almost second nature, but I think for people that come into this community, there's quite a lot of information that they need to gain to be able to carefully take care of their systems.
Yeah, when I moved into my place, we had to replace our septic, and I had 2 or 3 neighbors go, "Oh, how often are you supposed to? Oh, I didn't even realize we had septic. How often are we supposed to replace it?" And that was a little worrisome to me, but yeah, there are people that don't understand septic at all.
Okay, so can that not be remedied by the city putting out some laws about septic systems and planting and how often you have it pumped and blah, blah, blah? I mean, can't the city fulfill that role as opposed to putting it in the ordinance? I'm not opposed to putting it in the ordinance, I'm just wondering if it would be a little more effective coming from.
I guess my response would be that if I'm reading it at the time that I'm reading the ordinance, if I haven't recently seen a blog, it may not be clear in my mind. It may not be something that I understand right then and there as far as what my rights or obligations are under it. But the more important thing for me is it's important to me that the ordinance not protect trees, that we specifically exclude trees that are going to be dangerous to a septic, and that we not make people jump through extra hoops if they end up with a house that somehow had a tree planted with it. I looked it up on, I think it's Oregon State University has something about septic system management. That's a tongue twister. And they're actually even saying that you shouldn't plant within 25 feet or your root shouldn't even come within 25 feet.
Well,
So-
I looked it up too, and there's certain types of trees that can be planted somewhat close, but after Preston said that at the last meeting, I did look that up, and there are recommendations for certain types of trees that can be planted closer to site.
This is from Oregon State University right there. See where it says keep trees away at
Right.
least 25 feet or so?
And there's a lot of things that can affect these systems. I know a person that planted beach grasses on top of their septic system, and those beach grass roots go down 20 feet in certain places. So I
60
think
to
there's
70 feet.
a lot of different items on there that, we can put together a little educational program to say, hey, septic care, because we do care about our community and we want these things to be running correctly. We don't want somebody to inadvertently kill their own septic system. That's an expensive little mistake. And then also, we've seen other situations to where a neighbor will plant something that will affect their neighbors, situation. So maybe an educational, aspect of it is good. I see it a little problematic. It's difficult to tell people exactly what they can and can't plant and then try to organize that and to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, DEQ is gonna have a say in this.
They will,
I mean,
when it's going in.
They've got guidelines as to, with the new septic fields and everything like that, you should, your tanks and stuff like that, depending on the usage and things, minimum pumped every 5 years.
So I think an educational process would be helpful to the community, yes. Can we put this into an ordinance to prevent people from doing something that is silly like that? That would be tough. But the community goes both ways.
The point of this ordinance, though, is what trees we're going to protect. And my point is simply that I would like to exclude protecting trees, the heritage trees, 55-inch trees, any trees. There should be no special protection for a tree that is planted on a septic. And in this instance, it's very, it's just a simple, because it's not only is it expensive for the homeowner, but it's a health issue. It's a health issue, and that's should be one of our major concerns.
Maybe excluding anything that would be injurious to the septic system. Okay, that's where you're going. That's a little easier.
So can't that just be inserted into the applicability? The section applies to removal of trees in the city of Gerhard, except that it does not apply to tree removal in the following situations as put.
Yeah, we can look into that.
Yeah,
That would
so
be-
under
that'd be
C on
very
page
easy.
2. Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else that was not on here that we needed to accomplish?
Yeah, I need to, but I want you to finish what you're doing and then I have.
No, go ahead, no.
Oh, so I had a couple of citizens bring up to me the idea of having a tree care specialist give an evaluation about a tree versus who removes it. And the reason that I put that in there the way I did was to avoid conflict of interest. And the input that I got from the citizens was that, well, that's an extra expense for the homeowner to have somebody come and evaluate it, pay them, and then have somebody come and remove it, pay them. And I understand what they're saying, absolutely, and I think maybe Dana has talked about that too. So I was trying to think, and what I wanted to put out to everybody here is, how can we avoid that conflict of interest? If anybody has other ideas. So one idea I had was, okay, so the person that you have come out and evaluated, if they're going to be the one to potentially remove it, maybe they should have to do, it's called a resistance test. And they bore into the tree with an 1/8 inch, 1/8 of an inch drill bit. It's not a core sample per se, but it's a resistance to see whether there's rot in the tree. So that was one thing I thought about, well, okay, if you're gonna have the same guy do both things, maybe they should be held to having that standard of testing the tree.
Mhm.
But here's the kicker on that. That costs about $300 to have that test done. And to have somebody come out and evaluate a tree is probably only gonna cost you like 100 or 125 or something like that. So I'm happy to put the option in here, but I just wanted feedback from all of you about that, because I don't know how to avoid the conflict of interest.
You may not be able to, is the bottom line. In a perfect world, you would be able to do that. If the city could afford to employ our own specialists to use in that capacity, you could avoid that, but the bottom line is I don't think we can. And so at some point you have to do the best that you can do, but you cannot, one of the things you can't do in this law is mandate a tree specialist will do this or make it so restrictive that citizens can't comply because a tree specialist, there just aren't enough to do it, or they refuse to do it. Because like I said, one of my comments was that I had several people say, I won't ever write a report. I won't write a report. And if you're looking for that, you're gonna have to look for a different tree guy. Well, if every single one of them bands together and says, I'm not gonna do that, then we put all of our folks that live in town in a pickle, and they can't comply with the law, and they can't take down trees that they need to take down.
Yeah, see, I can't really see that on a practical level. I can't really see that happening. So even if you have a separate person evaluate the tree from the one who takes it down, these guys are all shunting work to each other. Bottom line. So nobody's really losing out.
Well, I know two people that will not write reports. Two certified arborists. They will not come out and write a report
On its
because
own, without the tree removal or at all?
at all. Well, with the new, you know,
If we were to restrict them to say that if you write a report, you can't.
you can't
do this.
And under what circumstances are we talking about writing the report, or were we talking about writing, when are you requiring a tree to be removed?
This would be a major
A major,
or a
Heritage or 50.
a heritage, one of the
Or
protected
sacred
trees or a
trees.
major.
Yeah.
Okay, so otherwise we can't say no anyway.
So we've got an ordinance, even if we adopt this as it is, where homeowners are able to, other than letting the city know that they're doing it, are able to take out three trees other than the 55-inch or the 100. Right? So we're not really impinging on people very much here.
Well, what are the trees that we were talking about earlier, that I think you were the one that brought it up the very first day, all of the trees where the roots all work together. And if you take out one tree, then it undermines the health of all of them. That would be,
I think the spruce groves work that way. I know the redwoods and sequoias, you know, the giant sequoias.
Aspen.
Well, I know the current ordinance as it is, it gives us the ability to know what's going on. It restricts willy-nilly tree removal, I think, by bringing it down to 3. And of course, building permits and septic permits being the side of that. I think that, you know, this is the start of something that will improve our situation within the city, help protect some of the trees that we have, and make sure we're doing things correctly. So we might be getting to the point to where we're a little close on some of this. I'll go ahead and add these notes after I find and have a conversation with Garrett and add these to them, and then we'll look at potentially having a work session. I'll work with the mayor on this during the work session day that we have already scheduled or the day. And then maybe keep this as a singular issue so we can make sure that we get it taken care of.
Yes, we won't ever have a single issue though.
It was a nice thought.
and I do have some other questions that I think probably I need to ask real quick before we wrap up, because I think maybe Sharon can answer some of them. to you, I would say on page 2, under C. The airport air overlay was not addressed as one of the exceptions. We already have rules about airport overlay and so trees there, we can't create special protection for those. Under C, under number 1, it says in order to construct proposed improvements, including the placement of structures, on-site sewage disposal facilities, blah, blah, blah. Are we also, are we intending that to mean also to repair and to protect if I have a problem? For example, when I bought my house, my home inspector, and when they did my property assessment, told me how much they thought my property was worth. They did not say your property is worth more money because you have trees on it. There's no check the box for making your property worth more money if you have a tree. Overall landscaping does improve the value of the property, but here's what they did call me out on, was some trees that were near my foundation and a tree that was too close to my septic system. And that was a problem for me. And it can affect people, you may not know it until you go to buy a house. Like, for example, my house was owned by the same family for many, many years. So now it becomes my problem now to remove that tree so that I can protect my septic and my foundation.
Protect versus cut down and remove because it's doing damage.
Well, sometimes if you dig down into those roots to protect, then it's going to damage the trees. So what I'm asking is, it says in number 1, in order to construct proposed improvements, including the placement of structures, on-site sewage, we're not saying that excluding protecting your existing structure, right?
Well, I think if the tree was doing damage to an existing structure, that there are some provisions in here to be able to have that removed. We had one that was going into and pushing up a foundation. And if they were to cut all the roots, it would have just made that tree dangerous at that point. I think there's provisions inside the ordinance, that would accommodate for something that's doing damage to a structure.
Okay.
Preventing it, knowing that, hey, this tree's eventually gonna grow there, was not necessarily addressed. It's either to solve a problem that's happening.
Okay.
Is the way that it was written.
So also on page 2, this is one of the things that Sharon included in her suggestions earlier at some point throughout this process. Under D, number 3, she moved the responsibility for granting or denying a request for a major tree removal from the planning commission, and she wants to give it to the city council. So I guess before I can comment on that, I need to, what was the thinking on that? Why?
My thinking on that was that city council is elected for the most part, and planning commission is appointed for the most part, is appointed. And so city council is somewhat more of a representative body of the community. And answers more to the community than the planning commission does.
Okay, so, but here's my problem with that. And that is that, if people have a right to due process. And when you take responsibility for making a decision like that from the planning commission, which should be your first initial bite at the apple. If somebody doesn't agree with the planning commission's decision, they always have the option to bring it up to us, challenge that, appeal that to us. If you take it from the planning commission and give it directly to us, you take out that portion of the appeal process. So the only thing that is left to them at that point in order to appeal a decision they don't like that we make is to take it outside of the city, and then it starts costing us money.
Okay, so I just need to follow this scenario. So say we give it back to the planning commission. So somebody comes to the planning commission and says, well, I've got this, huge old growth tree, bigger than 55-inch tree, and I want to take it out. And the planning commission says, oh, okay, go ahead, take it out. We don't care. Who would be appealing that?
It happens all the time. They challenge them all the time.
Who?
Peter, somebody can, if we issue a permit in that circumstance, somebody else can challenge it, is that correct?
As long as they participate in the hearing, either in writing or in person. They'd have to be a party to the hearing, but yeah.
If they stand up and make a statement in the hearing, so this is what they do in Cannon Beach. I know I don't like that you gave that permit on the tree, so I'm going to appeal it. So people that aren't even involved appeal the decisions.
Oh, okay, so just let me be clear about this. So you're saying that that person comes to the planning commission about taking out their tree, that's gonna be a public hearing? Is that what you're saying? Guys?
Yeah, all planning commission meetings are public meetings, and if they're processing, if they're administratively processing a tree cutting permit, then they would do that in a hearing format.
Okay.
No, but the flip side of that is, that's not what the Constitution gives. That's not what's protected, although there is a way for citizens like we just explained to appeal it. What is protected is the property owner. If he says, I need to take out this tree, it's unsafe, and the planning or city council says, no, you can't take out the tree, he has the right to appeal that, and that's what's protected. And if we are the first and last say, he has no other bites to the apple within the city, he has to take it to LUBA, is that right?
I mean, technically that's correct. I'm not aware of anyone. I mean, it's a land use decision, or it has a substantial impact on the landowner, so it would technically go to LUBA.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought it would just be the planning commission saying, sure, go ahead. I thought it would be that kind of a scenario. I didn't realize it would be in a public hearing format. I'm all good. If that's in a public hearing format and we have that written in here as a public hearing with the planning commission that can be appealed by somebody, I'm all good with that.
Well, the planning commission makes their decisions in a public format. They're just like us. They can't just say, hey, do you wanna approve this? So they have to approve it in an open meeting. Am I wrong?
They have to notice it. And
Yeah,
so that's
they
when the
have
public
to
is
process
made aware.
applications at a public meeting.
So this would be quasi judicial.
Yeah, it's not going to be legislative unless it's just,
So they would be taking this, having a hearing, making a decision. Doing a final order decision. And then that would stand unless it was appealed.
Gotcha.
And then once it was appealed, it would come to the city council.
I'm all
And
good
then if
with
they
that.
appeal you, it goes to LUBA.
Oh, I'm all good with that. I did not understand that that would be the process and that it could be appealed at that level and that the public would be notified that that's what was going to be happening and that the public could comment. I did not understand that. That's great. That's fine.
So are you okay with switching that back to giving it back to the planning
Right,
commission?
but I
They're the
want,
first say,
I
and then
want
we
it,
would be the
I want
appeal.
what put in there, because let's go back to the person who's reading this ordinance. I want something put in there to the wording that this is a public hearing, that people can appeal. I just want people to understand it, because I didn't understand it, and I'm in city government. There's a lot I don't
You were on
understand.
planning commission.
Right, I was on the planning commission for 2 years, so,
We'll put
I
some
think
words
that
about
should-
the procedure.
I think that should go in there for sure.
Okay, and then my next question for Sharon would be on page 3. Section E, letter 2. We went through a couple revisions ago and changed out substituted tree care specialist for arborist.
Yes.
Explain that to me, help me
Yeah.
understand that.
So I talked with a few of the tree people around here, and from what I heard, and also looked up the people who certify tree care people to be arborists. So I talked with them also. I think they're in Georgia or someplace. Anyway, they're in another state. And there are people who, and I'm not saying it's anybody here, I don't know that, but there are people who put themselves out as being arborists who are not currently certified as arborists. So And maybe they were arborists and maybe they didn't keep up with the training, because there's training that's involved in that. So that's why I changed that to tree care specialist, because you may think you're getting an arborist, and unless you're gonna be doing the due diligence to check on their licensing, you're not gonna know.
So how am I gonna know he's a tree care specialist? That's my question, what's the difference?
City reputation. The difference is only in the training and the title being given to you because you went through a specific training through this specific entity.
So as a tree care specialist, do they have more training than an arborist? The same training or less
It
training?
could be the same, and they're just not certified by that one arborist certifying entity in the United States. Or it could be more training, maybe the arborist did go through more
I
training.
ran into this just recently.
You did?
I talked to a tree care specialist, somebody who loves trees and is a trimmer, you know, who goes through and would look at a tree, and I said, well, I've got this potentially dangerous one, talking about IVAR's tree that I'm still working. And I asked them if they could you know, take a look at this and let us know whether or not it's dangerous. He says, well, I can't, because I'm not an arborist. I can't really give you a report on what that is. I can give you my opinion and then make some comments about potentially, you know, taking some limbs off one side to better balance, to make sure it's, you know, to look at it in the general aspect as far as its health. But to get an arborist report, you have to have an arborist. It's kind of what we get into.
Then staff is gonna have to do the due diligence to make sure that they are currently licensed as an arborist.
Yeah, I think once we receive the report, I mean, we could give it.
Because I looked up who's licensed as arborist here, and it's not who you think necessarily.
So- Here's my worry about it. When I look up tree care specialists, it came up with one. When I look up arborists, it comes up with far more people. So if I'm worried about how the words matter because I don't know the difference between the two. I want to be as permissive as possible so that people can find what they need.
Right, so an arborist is a tree care specialist. All
But he's not
arborists are tree care specialists, but they've been certified by this entity. All tree care specialists, doesn't matter what their knowledge or their, you know, longevity of experience is. Unless they've been certified by this one particular entity, they cannot call themselves arborists. And maybe some of them just haven't gotten to that point, or maybe they didn't, you know, want to go through the proscribed training. I have no idea why a tree care specialist would not become an arborist. I don't know.
Okay.
So saying tree care specialist gives us a little more latitude. All the people that you're looking at that say that they're arborists, that may or may not be true. I don't know.
Is this a state certified program?
No, it's a United States, it's an entity, it's
Some sort of national registry?
yeah.
So, I mean, I know of two people that have to be licensed with the state.
That's contractor stuff, isn't it? Pretty sure.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you're doing business as a tree arborist, or you're doing business as a tree specialist or something like that, and you're hanging your shingle out there, the state's gonna wanna have your money.
Well, how about maybe at the next meeting, we see if we can even get an arborist here to help us through that particular portion of things, you know, but I think that's something that we should put on the
Oh,
sheet.
you mean
in
at
order
our
to
work
accomplish.
session?
Yeah,
Are you gonna make sure they're an arborist?
yeah, I'm thinking about how.
Sorry,
No, I get that, I'm curious, I'm gonna get on there and take a look at some of the people that we know, but yeah.
I would feel a lot more comfortable if we did have an actual person who was Googling information, who was
Okay.
coming.
We'll put that on the
about
conversation.
this. You don't know what you don't know.
So Dana, in answer to your question, the bottom line is if we put tree care specialists, that gives us more possibility as far as people who can help us with their trees.
Okay, that's it, and I'm good with that, that was my question, is what's the difference, as long as it's not limiting the availability of contractors for folks that are gonna be all fighting for it in the next.
Right, so if you specify arborist in this, that's gonna limit that, that's gonna shrink that down.
Okay. So are we done asking questions?
May that go.
That gives us some more days to work. Thank you.
Yeah. Meeting's over.
So we're gonna have a work session,
We're gonna determine that and I'll get back.
That's, we can have over to.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Good seeing you guys.